Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome back to Unshakable with April Chapman. Today, we are doing another follow-up video. And today, we are talking about a recent interview that Nolan Wells' mother conducted with Don Lemon. And the reason why I think this interview is so important and why it needs to be discussed is because Don Lemon asked Christine Wonsley a very specific question. He brings up Brandon Tatum. If you guys don't know by now, Brandon Tatum is pretty much the only non-mainstream news media personality that managed to score an interview with friends of Nolan Wells. He released his content in a multi-part series, and it made sense because so many of us really were interested in knowing the truth about what happened with Nolan. And so for Brandon Tatum to take it upon himself on his own dime to go to Ocean Springs, Mississippi, to see Horn Island, to get an idea of what this community is like, what are what's the topography like and the environment like, where Nolan Wells was last seen, and then to get a firsthand account from these young men whose character has been disparaged and who have been the object and the subject of so much ridicule without evidence. I thought that was admirable. But we're going to take a look at this interview with Christine Wells, and there's some things that I want to engage with because, you guys, I have a theory as to why Nolan's mom was uninterested in talking with Brandon Tatum, and I'm going to give some insight as to what I believe this is really all about. So let's go ahead and take a look at this clip.
And we can't move forward because we don't have answers. Same time. But right now we're kind of just stuck. And we can't move forward because we don't have answers.
So when you talk about all the things that have been spread, there is this officer, I hate mentioning his name, a former officer who is a far right wing, who's been doing the interviews and has been saying, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not even going to comment on Brandon Tatum. No.
I respect that. And that's the right answer for everybody, I believe. And I feel like, because I mentioned him, I'm like, why did I even mention him? Because he doesn't deserve a platform.
No, he does not.
So let's talk about the people, the young men that he's been interviewing. They're saying they're his best friends. Some of them you said that you don't know. One of them even said, "Oh, Nolan would be outraged by the way his parents are handling this." And I'm like, "Wait, what? Like, why on earth would somebody go on and say that about a grieving family?" But
again, distraction. We're not even going to address them or that man. We only want the truth. Again, at the end of the day, I'm going to say it like I've been saying it. The only question we have is what happened to Nolan. That's what we need to know. That's it. That's all.
Dad.
This is funny. This is funny to me because Don Lemon brings up Brandon Tatum, not by name, right? Doesn't bring him up by name, just refers to him as that officer. And Christine Wells immediately knows who Don Lemon is talking about and shuts the conversation down and says, I'm not even going to address that man, and that it's a distraction. So I have so many questions because people who are interested in the truth and who don't have an agenda would not view a completely independent, unrelated party who goes directly to the horse's mouth to get their account of what happened. They would not call that a distraction. They would call that a pursuit of truth. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, I could have sworn that Ben Crump said that the family of Nolan Wells would be spending time grieving and that they wouldn't be taking any interviews. This is what Ben Crump said when Brandon Tatum reached out to get an interview from him.
We reached out to talk to Benjamin Crump. We didn't reach out to talk to the family. We only wanted to talk to Benjamin Crump. Put the thing back up there. And so as you can see on there, it says, at this time, the family is taking a break from media engagement as they continue to grieve and spend time together. Why are you talking about the family? I know they're taking a break. Benjamin Crump should be taking a break. He's the attorney.
Correct.
We only wanted to talk to him. They acknowledge the fact that you reached out and interested in speaking with attorney Benjamin Crump, but says that the family is taking the time apart. It's just a lame excuse for them not to engage with us.
Mind you, Brandon Tatum never asked to interview Christine Wonsley. He asked to interview Ben Crump. But just for the record, Ben Crump said, yeah, it's going to be a no. The family is taking some time away to grieve. And yet, how is it that Miss Christine found the time to cam up with Don Lemon?
So when you talk about all the things that have been spread, there is this officer, I hate mentioning his name, a former officer who is a far right wing, who's been doing the interviews and has been saying, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not even going to comment on Brandon Tatum. No.
Yeah, I told y'all. See, the reason why she's camming up with Don Lemon is because Don Lemon is a leftist. He's a liberal. And so she is not going to get any pushback. There are not going to be any hard questions. The narrative surrounding the interview is going to align with the narrative that they want the public to have. And so therefore, she can never entertain a conversation with Brandon, even though Brandon didn't ask for an interview. But for me, if I'm a parent and I'm on a pursuit of truth, if someone wants to interview me to gain my perspective, and if they have insight based on research and interviews that they have done with people intimately connected with my son and what happened that day, why would I not be open to it? This is why I'm telling you guys, ideologically, something is afoot here. And there is a reason, not that Brandon Tatum asked for an interview with Christine, because he didn't. But why would she go on to say, I'm not even going to acknowledge that man, right? I'm not going to acknowledge that man. And that man is a distraction. I thought that was an interesting way to frame it. Now, I know Christine Wells is very much aware of who Brandon Tatum is, that he is a conservative political commentator. And I'm going to be honest. Brandon was very fair and incredibly unbiased in that sit-down interview with the young men. He asked very poignant questions, very specific questions about their whereabouts. How long have you known Nolan? Why is it that the mother is saying she doesn't know you? I mean, what kind of interaction have you had with this family? He gave these young men the opportunity to give their firsthand account of what happened and to explain from their perspective what Nolan meant to them, how this whole event and tragedy has impacted them. So for the mom to shut down, dismiss, and want to move it aside from this series of interviews that gave us so much insight and information, to call that a distraction is suspicious to me. If I didn't have an agenda, if I wasn't trying to manipulate the narrative, if I was not interested in trying to make this about black versus white, but rather what happened to my son, I'm talking to everybody. I want to hear, where were you? What time was this? And I want to gather as much information as possible. But she calls Brandon Tatum a distraction. So let me explain to you what I believe is at work here. Now, I cannot prove this. However, I'm really good at listening and picking up context clues and then making inferences that are likely to be the case. If you remember in the Brandon Tatum interview with Warren in that interview talked to Brandon and talked about the reason why he chose to sit down with Brandon is because he trusted Brandon. He's been watching Brandon for a long time. And I said, ding, 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 ding.
Flag on the play.
Why did you choose to do it now? And why did you choose to not speak to anybody but me?
Right. Okay. Well, Officer Tatum, I've been watching you for a good while now. And, I think you're a great guy. You've kind of, ever since things got really hot, you've kind of been on my friends and I's side. And I really like that about you. I mean, I thought you were very confident and well-spoken, and I really enjoyed that. And all my friends and I watch you. We all think you're great. We love your faith with the Lord. You know, we try to be closer and closer with the Lord every day. And so did Nolan, you know, and, you know, that we just really liked the way you spoke about us and how you took our side, not based off someone's agenda and, you know, based off a race. Cause I mean, that's a horrible thing, you know?
Now, I'm not throwing a flag on a play in a bad way. I'm throwing a flag on a play because I said, that is a clue and gives me insight as to the type of person that Warren Hudson is. If you've been watching Brandon Tatum for a very long time, if you say, I like what you stand for, I like who you are, our worldviews align, then that tells me that many of the individuals in this community, not all, but particularly Warren Hudson and his family, they're conservative. If you are 18, 19 years old and you watch Brandon Tatum and you know who he is and you respect him and you like his content and you like what he's doing, oh yeah, you're a conservative. So when Christine Wells doesn't want to acknowledge Warren, wants to imply, I don't even know him, he wasn't my child's friend, the reason why she has to call the Brandon Tatum interviews a distraction because she wants to distract you away from the fact that her son was friends with not just some white folks, but some white conservatives. That is a distraction from the pro wokety woke blackety black. My son is a victim of white supremacy narrative. You are Ms. Wells, Miss Wonsley Wells. You were right. That is a distraction. You're not going to sit down with that man because in that conversation, if you decided to sit down with that man, it would probably be discovered that your son had more in common with Warren than he would have with a Don Lemon. Also remember Warren talking about Nolan's faith and how if in your friend group, if you're listening to Brandon Tatum, 9 times out of 10, people of the same feather flock together. Christine Wonsley Wells or Christine Wells Wonsley, I don't know the alliteration of her name, wants to distract from the fact that these young men, they're not some thugs. They're not, some crazed white liberals. They were Christian. He talked about his faith a lot in that interview. I cannot prove this, and I do not have firsthand testimony from Warren Hudson to affirm that he's a conservative, but I can tell you, flaming liberals, socialists, communists, Marxists, do not listen to Brandon Tatum and have a great deal of respect for their content and like what he's doing. Could this be, I don't know, the reason why Nolan's mother wants to distance herself from Brandon Tatum and doesn't even want it to be remotely known that her son had a very close-knit relationship with these kinds of people? Because according to Don Lemon, Brandon Tatum is a far right person. I'm like, wow, Brandon's far right. I mean, so I guess I would be far right. I guess that would make me a white supremacist too, but whatever. We don't need to address the ad hominem attacks, but we can just deal with the argument. I think it's interesting that not only did she want to distract away from the fact that she doesn't want to talk to Brandon Tatum, even though he has spoken to these young men, but that she called it a distraction. Well, here's my message to Nolan Wells' family. The reason why Warren Hudson said if he saw what Nolan's parents were doing, how he would be disgusted, is because I believe Warren knows the worldview that his friend Nolan Wells espoused. And if it's the same worldview that Warren espouses, he would be disgusted about the fact that his mama is out here exploiting his death with the pro-wokety woke blackity black crowd and chasing behind someone with such a low or absent moral character as Ben Crump and Al Sharpton, I am almost guaranteed that boy would be disgusted. He would. But she doesn't want that kind of information to become public knowledge, because then it puts a monkey wrench in the exploitation of the grift of the we are a victim because the whites did something to our son. So here's how I will end this video. Can I prove that Nolan Wells was a conservative or leaned conservative or espoused conservative worldviews? No, I cannot prove that definitively. But based off the context clues from that video, where Warren talked about how he felt about Brandon Tatum and why he chose to sit down with Brandon and not TMZ or someone else, is because the worldviews align, and Hudson is probably a conservative and conservative leaning. He probably liked Charlie Kirk too. And if he liked Charlie Kirk, then Nolan Wells probably liked Charlie Kirk too. And Lord forbid, if the decedent, Nolan Wells, had a favorable view of Brandon Tatum or Charlie Kirk, well, what would that do for the pro-wokety woke blackity black chronic victim ambulance chasing grift? That would pose a problem. The black community, because they are very unrighteously tribal, not all, but the ones that are blinded by their ethnic narcissism, because they are unrighteously tribal, they may not give to a GoFundMe if they knew that these are worldviews that Nolan espoused. They may not jump on board with the race narrative and scream justice for Nolan Wells because he's a conservative. He would have to align with the worldview that his mother is aligning herself with in order for her to maximize and garner the maximum amount of sympathy and money. And so these are my thoughts and opinions as to why Christine Wonsley doesn't want to sit down with that man, and why that man is a distraction and he's not even worth mentioning, even though he seemed genuinely interested and on a pursuit of truth. But I'll leave that up to you guys. I'm curious to know, what do you guys think? My theory of Nolan possibly leaning conservative because of his association with Trayston and Hudson, Warren Hudson. Yeah, that type of information wouldn't have hit the same. Like, that victimhood mentality wouldn't have landed the way it's been landing. So she's got to keep up the facade and the charade of the woe is me. The whites did something to my son. When I believe in her heart of hearts, she knows that these young men didn't have anything to do with her son's death. But at this point, the investigation is still ongoing. The autopsy, preliminary one, and toxicology is being sent to a grand jury, which is customary. And we will see eventually. We will find out. But these are my thoughts and opinions. I am not asserting that what I have said in this video is a bona fide fact. But it is a theory based on the context clues that I gleaned from the Brandon Tatum interview. So I'm curious to know, what do you guys think? Leave me your thoughts and your comments down in the box below. And until next time, you guys, stand firm, stay bold, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace.